Namaste, it's Sahararose, and welcome back to the Highest Self podcast, a place where we discuss what makes you your soul's highest evolvement. Baby, I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the gray. Okay. No more introduction needed. Today I have on the podcast the person who wrote this epic song. No introduction needed for Seal, but Seal is so much more than a singer. This song was actually the number 2 most played song in American history after My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. Pretty big deal if you don't recognize it from the Batman movie in the 90s. It is such a beautiful song. And what's so weird was I had this song stuck in my head. Like, I would listen to it over and over again a couple months ago, right before I got connected with Seal to do this podcast. And it was like the universe was just preparing me for it because it's still one of my favorite songs ever. So if you were born after the 90s and don't know who Seal is an incredibly accomplished singer, songwriter, Grammy award-winning artist, but he's so much more than that. And that's what we discuss in this episode. We talk about past lives, his spiritual practice, meditation, and an album that most of you are not aware of, his mantra album with Guru Singh. So I had the privilege of going into Seal's house where we ended up hanging out for like 4 hours. I heard his new upcoming album, which mixes spirituality music with fun dance music. And he is just such an epic, loving, caring, gifted person. Like, real deal. I want to be Seal's BFF. He's so cool. So without further ado, let's welcome Seal to the Highest Self podcast. And before we get started, check out these brands that make Highest Self podcast possible. What's your dosha? Well, if you want to find out, I invite you to take my quick little quiz over on sahararose.com. And in a couple questions, I will let you know the exact percentages of the doshas in your mind and in your body and email you a free 3-day mini course on how to include Ayurveda into your modern lifestyle. So head over to my website, sahararose.com, to discover your dosha today. This episode is brought to you by Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a modernized Ayurvedic supplement company that takes certain issues that we have, such as mood, joints, immunity, digestion, and creates these custom little packets exactly for us, infusing ancient Ayurvedic herbs with modern vitamins and minerals. I take the mood formula daily. It is great if you work a stressful job, had adrenal fatigue, ever suffer from anxiety or even depression. And it really heals you from a fundamental and holistic level. So if you want to try it out, head over to Youveda, YOUVEDA.com. Use the code Sahara and you'll receive 35% off your first order. And they now ship to almost every country globally. So check it out if you live internationally. They may be shipping to your country too. And they just added India, guys. So welcome, Seal, to the Highest Self podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Saharis. It's lovely to welcome you in my home.
So the first question that I would love to ask you is, what makes you your highest self?
My highest self. Well, you mentioned that earlier. I guess what immediately comes to mind is my connection to my heart. Whenever I feel connected, which is something that I strive for at all costs, I think that is when I'm perhaps approaching my highest self.
So very beautiful. And you've had an incredible journey connecting to your heart. And for listeners who may not know about your journey, can you share a little bit about your childhood and the obstacles that you faced to really get to where you are right now?
Sure. Well, I was given up to foster parents as soon as I was born, from the age of 0 to 4. I basically call it adoption because that's essentially what it was. So I lived with foster parents from the age of 0 to 4. Then I lived with my biological mother from 4 to 6. And then from 6 to 15, when I actually ended up running away from home, I lived with my biological father and my stepmother, who I love dearly. And I have 5 brothers and sisters. Then I ran away at home at 15, traveled around, kind of, slept on friends' floors, was homeless for a little bit, although I shouldn't really say homeless because I lived in shelters whenever I could. And then it's been a journey ever since, to be honest. My life changed when I was 26, 27. And I sort of turned into the musician that people know me for, the person that people know me for today. I shouldn't say I turned into, but I guess I became that person, or more of that person. Maybe that's what I was always heading towards, who knows. And then for the past 30 years or so, it's been extraordinary, this journey that I've been fortunate enough to experience. I went to see Bohemian Rhapsody the other day, that movie. And of course, it was based around the life and times of the great Freddie Mercury. And it brought me back to a time where when he died, they did something that we affectionately refer to as the Dead Fred Show, where basically all of the people that were current and that were, in this kind of fraternity of the music industry, we all got together at Wembley Stadium and sang a Freddie Mercury song, a Queen song. And I remember when Brian May asked me, this is about a year into my career, he asked me what song he wanted me to do it, and he asked me what song I wanted to sing. And I chose that song, Who Wants to Live Forever. Do you know that song? Mm-hmm. From that movie Highlander, I think it is. I always loved that song. And I remember singing that song at Wembley, and it all kind of came flooding back. And, that's just one of the most amazing experiences I've been fortunate enough to have. And most recently I did not that she's in any way, shape or form past or showing any signs of doing that, but I sang at Joni Mitchell's birthday, and I got to sing a great song, one of the greatest songs ever written, a song called Both Sides Now. And so, when I look at things in isolation, which is very rarely, I can say, well, it was a tough childhood, or it was a tough, being essentially homeless, running away from home, having a kind of traumatic childhood was tough. But then when I look at some of the experiences that perhaps, in some ways at least, prepared me for the life that I now have, I look at this what some would refer to as an adverse childhood as preparation for not only the valleys of this journey that I'm on now, but also the peaks. There's a certain kind of chaos that comes with having such a kind of dynamic, I would say. There's a turbulence that comes with a dynamic life. And my life has certainly been very dynamic. And I think you need to be prepared to deal with the good things as well as the seemingly kind of difficult times.
Yes, and maybe in some divine way, your soul before it came on this planet was like, yeah, I'm going to go through that childhood because it's going to prepare me for everything it is that I'm going to accomplish in this lifetime.
Perhaps, well, that's a really great way of putting it, Sahara, because I think you're right. I think that, I believe I should say that we're all journeying. I do believe that, like, for example, we walk into a room together right now and we have a connection, or myself and Maya have a wonderful connection. We work together, sure, but we have a connection. I think one of the things I'm realizing recently is that for the longest time, I've always kind of associated that connection with a mental or a physical identification, if you like, I like the way that person looks, and I like that person's smile, or, I like the way that person dresses or carries themselves, or I like the way he looks, or I've always associated that kind of this familiarity with something that we can see. And, I think it was my dear teacher, Guru Singh, that said, Yogi Bhajan used to say to him, we have substituted telepathy for telephony, and so I guess what he was trying to say is that I was for the longest time so accustomed to associating this familiarity with based on what I see or what I hear. And the more that I delve into this, I'm realizing that there was this whole other communication going on. I believe, in any case, that there's a spiritual communication, identification going on, that your spirit recognizes my spirit. We recognize each other along this journey, and almost and due to the way that we're vibrating or oscillating, depending on what part of that journey we're on, we recognize it. And that there is this kind of telepathy going on, this familiarity that is on an astral level, not just on this physical level. Oh, I get on with that person. Well, yes. And I also think that Maya's and my spirits get on really well. I mean, we connect on an astral level as well as, on a day-to-day basis. And it's just and that kind of has pretty much been a theme of how I'm kind of at present journeying through life, is this recognition of everyone being on a journey, and less about right or wrong or things that I don't necessarily agree with. Or that's not to say that I will agree with, have an opinion, or I'm not fond of certain things or certain people's behaviors. But it's a lot easier to accept if you look at things from a perspective of everybody is journeying. And that makes it easier for me one of my mantras is to love all things and everyone and all things.
So beautiful. So do you think that those certain people that you have that soul connection with, do you think that past lives are involved with that?
Perhaps. And that's an interesting concept, past lives, because I also believe that when we say past lives, there is a possibility that past, future, present, it's all happening right now at the same time. And there are, it brings into view the possibility of multiple dimensions. And do I believe that there are past lives involved? Sure. But I think that those past lives are only past lives in the context that we can understand them.
In the linear concept of time.
Yes. But then the more I think about that, my head starts to hurt. So
right, it's hard. But yeah, certain people, it's almost like you know them from somewhere and you're not sure how, and it's almost unexplainable to see. Or even some people, you're just like, oh, like something bad has happened between us, but I can't put name on it. That
does happen, Sahara, I will freely admit. But then I'm also, that's the bit that I'm focusing on, is that I'm trying to understand right now, is that reaction to something. Why is that? Why do I have that reaction to certain things? And that's not to say that I will stop having that reaction, but I'm trying to kind of understand it more.
Yeah.
And so that I can perhaps do something about it.
And sometimes, as you mentioned, it's just not that vibrational fit. Maybe they're just somewhere else, or at that certain time that you cross paths, you were having a bad day and something was off or something clicked. So I know that you started singing about spirituality, and it's something that you've come back to. And what I wanted to ask you about was, when I was just looking through your albums, I saw an album called A Game of Chance. And it was Guru Singh featuring Seal. I was like, wait, Seal has a mantra album? And I went to sleep to it last night. So I would love to know how Guru Singh became your teacher and your involvement with chanting, and if that's still a part of your spiritual practice.
Yes. It's funny it's not funny at all, because again, goes back to what Guru Singh was saying about telephony and telepathy. It's interesting that you would bring that up, because we have been talking about just recently about doing more of that.
I loved it.
Just doing more of that, because I think it's pretty useful right now. The Game of Chance. How did Guru Singh and I meet? Well, we met through a friend many, many years ago. And I went to see him on recommendation of this friend. And he said something to me which kind of made a lot of sense at the time. I was debating. I was essentially pleading my case, as to why I was having a dysfunctional relationship with this particular friend. And, I was like a well-versed barrister, in a court of law. I had my case like solid sound, and I was, the reason why she's complaining is because this, that, and the other, and this is what happened on this day, and this is my reaction to it. And of course, that's a logical reaction. And he said something to me at the time. He kind of looked at me and he said that there was no right. I'm paraphrasing now. He said there was no right and no wrong. And then he said, look at the person you're talking about. And I did. And I realized that that person at that point was what I was saying true? Perhaps. Did they have any defense for what I was saying? And no, they were in a lonely place. And so whilst my case may have been sound, it wasn't right. And we hit it off. So, this is what 22, 3, 4, 5 years later, we've known each other. And he asked me to do that album, actually. And I wasn't, at the time, I didn't really have an idea of what it was he was asking me to do. Not really a full comprehension, but now I look back at it and I see the power of it and how fortunate I was that he asked me to do that.
So do you think there will be another one soon?
Yes, we've been talking about it. That's why I say it's interesting that you should bring that up, because I did a yoga session with somebody, which is not something I do a lot of, yoga in general. I did a session with this guy called JC, and he, at the end of that session, he said, I hope you're not put off by this, but at the end of my yoga sessions, he came up here and we had a great session with some friends. And he said, at the end of my sessions, I put on this music, and he played Game of Thrones. And I said, God, this keeps coming up in my consciousness now. We're communicating. That's what's happening. Mm-hmm. Guru Singh he's put out a call onto the golden grid or the infinite oneness. Mm-hmm. And if you listen closely, it's there. So I called him up, and he has said, I called him up by telephony. Mm-hmm. Of course, we'd already been speaking telepathically. And he said, yes, somebody else had approached him recently with some technology or something, and had said that, this thing that you did with Seal, this would be great for this thing on a global level to spread this, message of love. And he had been talking about that, and then I called, and neither of us were surprised because, of course, we've been communicating already. But that's just one dynamic of the relationship I have with the divine teacher, Guru Singh. He's lovely. He's a wonderful, wonderful being. Absolutely.
So I'd love to know, what does your spiritual practice look like? Do you meditate? Do you do Kundalini yoga? Mostly just walking?
I don't do Kundalini yoga. I do meditate daily. Mm-hmm. And it's generally when I wake up first thing. In fact, it's always when I wake up first thing in the morning. And I will set aside 20 minutes to balance myself and to connect. Mm-hmm. Because I feel that's when if things fall apart, it's generally because there's a disconnect and a self-disconnect. I mean, that's a good place to start.
Mm. Do you do a Vedic meditation, mantra-based meditation, or just quieting the mind?
Just breathing and silence and being still. It's based around noting certain things that are signs of behaviors that are going on in my life. And so if there is a certain behavior that keeps occurring, rather than trying to stop that behavior, and rather than trying to judge that behavior, for a second, analyzing it more so. Perhaps it sounds too clinical, but noting it and trying to understand without judgment what is behind that, what it is, and then letting that come and go out of my consciousness, out of my thoughts, and labeling that behavior. And it could be something positive too. But understanding what, oh, it could be something neutral, but understanding, spending time through a process of breathing, of just controlled breathing, spending time looking at those things and understanding the relationship that they have in my life, and really taking care to examine the relationship rather than the effect or what that particular thing makes me do or trying to stop that particular thing. Just understanding by a process of breathing, noting, identification, and understanding, just changing the relationship that I have with those things. And so essentially what it is, my meditation involves setting me up for the day by connecting. I talked about connecting earlier on, and the importance of, for me, of course, is the self-connect. Sure, I have aspirations to what I want to do, how I want to contribute further to the world, how I want to continue on this path, this journey. What is it I am trying to achieve? What is it that will give me the most fulfillment? Am I all of these things? Sure, I have these aspirations and goals at what I would like to do, but more importantly, at least for the immediate, for the moment, the key to all of that for me is understanding myself, my dynamic self, which was different 5 years ago to where I am now. Understanding that by trying to connect with it, the simple thing of connecting with myself and understanding, connecting. You hear people use this term, my truth. Whilst I don't really understand what that means, but it is kind of, I guess one could say that my practice in the morning, my meditation, is essential for me to connect with the true self. And that only comes, I find, personally, that only comes through examination and removing distraction. And so, in summary, my 20-minute meditation each day is designed to remove distraction, to be silent and to be still, and to analyze my relationship to whatever it is that I'm thinking, or whatever it is, a particular trait or whatever that is, but to also, it's designed to let a natural analysis occur through the process of noting and identification. And that allows you, or allows me, you see, to be light, to be weightless. It allows me to acknowledge these things, but not carry them. Just this journey to try and understand the dynamic of the relationship with these things, rather than say, well, that's what I do, or that's a part of me, or that's, that is who I am. It's more about understanding the relationship with that particular thing. Because I think who we all are at our core is these divine beings. I think we're amazing, and we just get caught up in doing things that maybe are perhaps not so amazing, and because of our relationship with those things.
Absolutely. And I think by naming the emotion, it allows you to see that you are not the emotion. It's just something that you are temporarily experiencing. So when you can see, oh, that's jealousy, that's shame, that's anger, you can separate yourself from that. Because most people are just like, that's just who I am.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you've summed up what I was trying to say in like 2 sentences.
No, but I totally understood. And a lot of people, they call that the path of contemplation. So the path of contemplation is almost like meditation, but the mind is a little bit more active because you're contemplating your emotions, yourself, your identity. And then for a lot of people, especially more creative people, that allows them to go into a meditation, whereas other people are just like, silence the mind and there's nothing there. And that allows them to tap in more. So they say people with more Shakti, more kind of creativity, divine feminine, which is music, the path of contemplation is more effective for them. I know I'm one of those people as well.
Yeah, you look like you were understanding exactly
No,
what I was talking
I totally got that. And I've done a lot of practices of just seeing how your emotions are so fleeting. And, we go through so many emotions each day. And if we can just recognize like, oh, I can feel that anger coming on. Oh, there she is. And like almost name it, then you see like this emotion can change into happiness, into joy, into ecstasy. It's up to me. I'd love to introduce you to the tea brand I've been loving recently, Vadam Teas. The tea starts in the mountains of the Himalayas and within hours of harvest are packed at their tea facility and shipped all around the world. I'm personally indulging in their Master Tea Assorted Pack, which contains 15 loose leaf blends, black, oolong, green, and white. They pack their teas in single-serve premium pyramid tea bags so you can have the convenience of loose leaf tea anywhere. Not just this, but they've managed to eliminate all middlemen from the sourcing process, thereby retaining all earnings in the source region for the farmers. These teas are fair trade, organic, and pesticide-free, and they benefit the farmers directly, which I deeply care about. Additionally, every time you pick up a pack of Vadam teas, a part of the revenue goes towards educating the tea growers' children, which makes it all even more worthwhile. Oprah just listed as one of her top favorite things, so I take Oprah's word for it. So if you want to try this out, head over to vadamteas.com, VAHDAM teas.com, and use coupon code Sahara for 20% off. Again, head over to vadamteas.com and use coupon code Sahara for 20% off. Are you wondering how you can help others live healthier and happier lives? Well, today I want to tell you about SCU, Southern California University of Health Sciences. SCU is an accredited premier academic institution that has been preparing students to become compassionate, effective health professionals for more than 100 years. At SCU, you can become a modern-day healer. They offer multiple programs like Doctor of Chiropractic with a sports medicine focus, acupuncture and Chinese medicine, massage therapy, and more. Plus, SCU has an on-campus health clinic where students get hands-on experience with real patients. Visit schuhs.edu/apply and apply for free. Again, visit schuhs.edu/apply to apply for free today. Okay, if you're anything like me, you buy green juice, spend way too much money on it, and then forget to drink it, and it sits in your fridge. Ever happened to you? No, just me? Okay, well, I got your solution, and it is called Organifi. So Organifi is a gently dried superfood mix that has real green ingredients like moringa, chlorella, mint, spirulina, beets, matcha, wheatgrass, ashwagandha, turmeric, lemon, coconut water, all dried up. So all you have to do is add water. Yes, you do not have to use a blender. You do not have to spend $12 on a juice. You don't have to go shopping, anything, and you get all of your superfoods in one drink. They also have an amazing red juice, which is like a tart, sweet little brew, as well as Organifi Gold, which has our favorite, turmeric. So I love these. They're all USDA certified organic, and I literally travel with them and have them at home every day. So head over to Organifi.com, Organifi.com, and use code Sahara for 20% off. Again, Organifi.com, and use code Sahara for 20% off your delicious green juice magic. A question that a lot of listeners had was, what advice would you love to give to your 20-year-old self?
What advice would I like to give to my 20-year-old self? Stop carrying so much weight. You know, that's something that I guess has come up more recently, is how much weight we as individuals have a tendency to carry around with us. And it's not, it's not one's fault. I mean, not in particular. It's part of the journey, but it's not that it angers me. It kind of saddens me sometimes if I think about it, how much weight in general I have carried around. And so if I was giving myself some advice, my 20-year-old self, is that, a lot of this weight isn't yours. And so it's this thing of kind of changing the relationship with these things. It's back to that again. A lot of this weight isn't really yours. And it does have, the problem with it, sure, we all have to journey, but the problem with it is that it does have physical manifestational consequences. Like literally carrying around, for example, my shoulders. That's, if I am stressed out, I may not look stressed out to you at the moment, but believe me, I can be. But if I carry stress, it is in my shoulders. It is, I feel like I'm physically carrying weight. And it's one of the things that meditation on my morning practice that allows me to do is to try and get weightless. And it's something that's come up quite a lot because I'm writing about it a lot now. Musically, the type of music I'm making, and not just lyrically, but in its sonic structure, is this theme of weightlessness has come up quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit more about the music that you're working on and what is to come?
Well, sure, but it's always a funny one trying to describe music because, you get musicians go, oh yeah, it's going to be this, and it's going to be that, and oh, you're going to love it, it's going to be great. But it's quite free, the music that I'm writing now. I mean, I've always attempted to be free and I hope I've always, for the most part, created music from the heart, or at least I've let it come through the heart. But what I'm doing now, it's quite, I guess you could say it was up-tempo, but in a soothing, weightless kind of way. And it has, above all else, a lot of dialogue. That's not necessarily saying a lot of words. In fact, it probably has less lyrics than I've ever sung before. But there is a lot of dialogue, by definition meaning two-way communication. Because I have found that in order to receive the kind of music that I am interested in now, and when I say receive, because it's debatable whether we actually create it or it comes through. But in order to receive, to be open enough to receive that kind of music that I am interested in operating with now, there has to be a certain amount of listening to you, because ultimately it's all energy. It's all energy, and what we do with it, I have a voice. And so that is really my way of, or a way of articulating that energy, maybe dressing it so that somebody else can feel. And so in order for that to come through, there has to be, I have found recently, as much listening as there is singing about it and writing. So the music that I'm making now it's quite hypnotic. There is, I guess, a mantra type element to it. It is designed rhythmically for you to be able to, wherever possible, feel weightless and lost in the music, but yet with a feeling of security and comfort. And it is, lyrically, I am focusing on, I am acknowledging the reality of our surroundings, but I'm choosing to focus on the great things about us as sapiens, the things that we do that are incredible. Because I feel right now that, if we're just keeping it real for a second, these are extremely turbulent times. And I'm not necessarily just talking about, administratively or politically. I'm not talking about that. That is a manifestation of something else. There is, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you, I'm sure you're fully aware of it. It's the age-old battle going on, that it's nothing new, but it's at pretty turbulent proportions right now. It's good versus evil. It's light versus dark. It's love versus not love. It's that same old battle that's been going on. But right now, the stakes are really high because it's so turbulent right now, like so turbulent. And therefore, there's just this greater need, I feel, to connect, to really connect. And musically, I feel that I can kind of best contribute by producing something that is designed to allow us all to connect and to come together and to bring us closer to who we essentially really are.
So beautiful. And you're feeding the light instead of battling with the hate.
Yes, and so I'm focusing on celebrating, lyrically, I'm focusing on celebrating the great things about you, the things that, as turbulent as it is, I have been fortunate enough and more recently, to come into contact with people who are just doing amazing things. But of course, we're sensationalists or we have sensationalist tendencies. And so we don't focus on that as much. And I say we, generally speaking, present company, yourself excluded. But we live in a society where the stakes are higher than ever before because it is perhaps more turbulent, but also B, because we are distracted. We're not as connected. And so we're frantic because, this notion that kind of mankind, we're heading for doom and disaster and destruction. I don't buy into that. There are amazing people doing amazing things in this world, amazing things. And I'm coming across them every day, empaths who are incredible scientists, Nobel laureates, Guru Singh, yourself, the fact that you are here and you have this wellness philosophy and this wellness attitude and that you are trying to spread and bring to people. That's us sapiens when we are at our most divine. That's when we are most wonderful, when we are most beautiful. And it's very easy, at least I have found, to take that for granted and to not focus on that. And so my music lyrically is, for example, there's one of the songs I have called Let Go the Weight. And it talks about, the opening line is, could you be the one? Could you be the incredible one? Could you be the one? Could you be that for everyone? I guess musically what I'm trying to do is, a lot of it is, whilst it is in acknowledgement of this turbulence, its focus is more on how amazing we are.
And I think that's such an important balance because I think sometimes a lot of spiritual people, they pretend that it's not happening. And if you don't look at the turbulence that's happening, it's as if it's not there. And it takes real strength to acknowledge, like, we're going through turbulent times and there's a lot going on and I'm going to bring it to light.
Mm-hmm. Well, try to at least, again, look, that's not to kind of make light of a lot of the current disasters that are occurring in the world. It's not to make light of that. I understand that. But it's a lot. It's a lot to, particularly when you have children, it's a lot to endure all the time. And I think one of the things that, again, that I have with my meditation in the morning, I use the word connection and to reconnect and to silence the mind. But one of the things I'm realizing is balance, is how much it is something that I, even when I didn't know it, have been striving for my entire life, this thing of balance. It's so key. And to set it, I feel that musically, that to also focus on the heart and the soul and the spirit, but how wonderful that is when we are silent and when we are not distracted and when we are connected to it. We do amazing things. We achieve amazing things. We really are beautiful, at times.
Does the album have a name yet?
Well, I don't even know if it's an album, to be honest. I mean, it's just music. It's, it's weightless in its action and its labeling as well. I don't know no, it doesn't have I played with the idea of what title the other day, but it's not at this stage, not so important. I'll play you some when we're done and you can have a...
Absolutely. When can we expect its release? Do you know?
Well, it isn't really an album yet. I would imagine we could expect it maybe perhaps towards the latter part of this year, but there will be music released before. There'll be a lot of music released up until that album.
Wonderful.
It'll just be a collection of everything that's been released thus far, but with some more things into it. Because I'm quite into this thing of a dynamic album, but not just dynamic in its tracks, but dynamic in its creative process. Mm-hmm. So it's adjusting to, rather than lock myself away for 3, 4, 5 months and then go ta-da, I'd much rather kind of release things over a longer period of time and have it move with the people who I am having the conversation with.
That definitely embodies weightlessness in itself.
Yes, and have it move with you. Like, for example, this conversation that we are having today will affect the way that I will perhaps work this evening.
Absolutely.
And which it's always been that way, but I would like to kind of extend that to release as well.
How beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. You're like a monk full of divine wisdom channeling through you.
I don't know about that. So I think, see, that's another thing. Okay, look, I've caught myself doing something that I promised that I wouldn't do that. There's this photographer. He's not really a photographer, actually. He's a kind of, I guess he's a spiritual leader, although he doesn't pretend not to be. But his name is Sean Tucker. He's, I don't know, are you aware of him?
I'm not familiar, no.
He's a lovely guy, and I've actually spoken to him. And he did a podcast recently, and he talked about something that I found really interesting. He said that, there's one kind of neuroscientist that said the human brain is like Velcro to negative thoughts and Teflon to positive things, to positive thoughts. And also said that this neuroscientist had said, our tendency is to, we dwell on a negative thing. And when somebody says something nice or something positive, we oh, yeah, well, thanks.
Right.
And he said that this neuroscientist had also said that, and a good practice is when somebody says something positive to you, or if something great happens in your life, like you just, maybe one of your listeners writes to you and says, Sahara, God, you really changed my life. I listened to something you said. And instead of kind of, Tefloning it kind of off into the distance, holding it for 10 seconds, but really holding it for 10 seconds, holding that fleeting thought that you have allowed, that fleeting response that you have allowed yourself. Oh, that's nice. Anyway,
totally.
Holding that for 10 seconds, you would be surprised how difficult that is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, to hold that, somebody said something nice. But the reason was that, in those times where it isn't so great, the human brain is remarkable. What it does by you repeating that practice of holding a positive thought for 10, 20 seconds, you are creating actual neurotramlines so that in times of adversity, your brain actually looks to that resource of positive thought or positive emotion. And you are actually creating, by holding that positive thought whenever it comes around, you are creating neural pathways to that so that the brain can then later access that when it needs to. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, how fascinating that a neuroscientist is backing that too. I love when the spiritual and scientific world can agree on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the good news, I find, is that the further and further we go into this age, the more and more I'm finding that's happening.
Yes.
Because we're at a crossroads right now where, there have been answers that have presented new questions.
Yes. And as we shift from that survival brain, it's really that survival brain that says something's wrong. I might not be okay. So let me dwell on what's wrong. And, we've kind of gone up Maslow's hierarchy and we don't have to worry about that anymore, but our brains still haven't quite caught up yet. So we're literally reprogramming ourselves to receive. That's really what it comes down to. We're not okay with receiving.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom again. And everyone go follow Seal on Spotify so you can tune in to his new music as it releases so weightlessly this year. And we look forward to hopefully having you again soon.
Thank you. I would love to. Thank you.
Thank you. What a gift is Seal to the world, to all of us, to Highest Self Podcast. I could literally talk to him forever. And it's so beautiful to see the crossing between music and spirituality. I think we need more of that. We need more music we can dance to and have fun to and move our bodies to that also has positive uplifting lyrics. Because as you guys know, I love to dance. I know a lot of you guys love to dance, and we don't want to dance to swear words and to misogynistic lyrics. We want something that up-levels us, inspires us, connects us to our highest selves. So I'm so glad that Seal heard that call from the divine and is creating that for all of us. So if you love this episode, I would love to gift you the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind, Body, Type, which is different from my book, Eat, Feel, Fresh. It is my unreleased, never to be released book because it is now part of my Eat Right for Your Mind, Body, Type program. I would love to send it to you absolutely free. All you got to do is leave me a review in the iTunes store, take a screenshot and email it over to me at Sahara@eatfeelfresh.com. Again, take a screenshot of the review and email it to me at Sahara@eatfeelfresh.com, and I will send you the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind, Body, Type. Namaste.
There used to be a graying tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug that's high and not the pill. But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, stranger it feels, yeah. And now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. There is so much a man can tell me, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. Baby, to me you're like a grown addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me is that healthy, baby? But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become a light and the light that you shine can't be seen? Baby, I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the grave. There is so much a man can tell me, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. a grown addiction that I can't deny. Now won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become a large and the light that you shine can't be seen?